Welcome to this week's 2 Men in the Middle. This is where 2 men in the middle of the country get together and talk politics and current events. I'm Craig Huey.
I'm Brandon Kinnig.
Brandon, are you excited that next week we're actually going to have Democratic presidential debates?
Yes, the unofficial kickoff of the 2020 campaign.
Did this totally sneak up on you? Because if you would have asked me like last week, when is the first Democratic debate? I would have said, we got to be 2 or 3 months out from that.
It did. And maybe I thought it was in the fall for some reason, but
I thought October or something.
Yeah, this does seem early, but yeah, this will give us the first indication of where the candidates stand,
Yep.
Who departs after this first debate, kind of narrow down the field, which has to happen at this point with 22 plus candidates.
Has the DNC come out with how many debates they're going to be?
There was a number thrown out there. I don't remember what that was.
If I'm thinking too, didn't the Republicans have like 14 or 15 debates?
They did.
They had some ungodly number.
It may have been 16. That number is sticking out in my mind for some reason, and that was an all-time high. That was not the norm. So do the Democrats follow that lead? They definitely have enough candidates to
I think you're right.
have 16
it was 18
debates.
candidates and 16 debates.
Yeah.
And after a while, it's like, well, you're obviously just doing this for a ratings bonanza. And after a while, they just got repetitive, and I don't know if we learned a whole lot from the 16 debates from the Republicans.
No, I mean we really didn't. Other than you get more opportunity to see the candidates stumble, make gaffes. I mean that's really what comes out of those debates after a while.
So let's start on the debates. Number one, I think we both agree there's a second and third-ish tier of candidates that after the first debate, they will be off the stage. We've said Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Christian Gillibrand, Castro, folks like that, Hickenlooper.
They have, who have been able to gain traction.
Yeah.
Bennett, de Blasio, some of these.
I can't believe de Blasio even has the balls to show up to this.
Right.
That's just ridiculous.
The governor of Washington, I don't know why I'm blanking out on
Jay
his
Inslee.
Jay Inslee, yeah. Some of these that are just,
So we think almost the next time the debates happen, there'll only be one night because enough people are probably going to drop out after this that there's no need to carry on with the with this 2-night format.
Right. We may see more than 3 to 4 drop out too. So again, part of it is fundraising. If some of these candidates don't get any type of fundraising boost post debate, because that's what they also look for, then that's a sign too that they maybe shouldn't be in it.
And remember when the Republicans had like the varsity stage and the JV stage, and you could like get your way up to the varsity stage.
Yeah,
with,
that was
again polling or there was some
deal.
criteria to do that.
Yeah, it was about polling threshold and getting over. Gosh, was it 7% or something in the polls? I don't remember. Something like that. It was something like 7%, and that would determine. That's why it would vary sometimes from debate to debate.
Because Carly Fiorina bounced back and forth between those two stages a couple of different times.
And
it's like, this is the weirdest format for a candidate who isn't front running, doesn't have a lot of name recognition. Very difficult for them to catch ground at this point.
Yeah, it really is. And that's going to be the tough deal for the Democrats, is that they have so many candidates. Yeah. Especially those lower tier candidates are going to really struggle to stand out, when they have such limited time to answer questions and they're sharing the stage with so many others.
So I think the two candidates I'm most interested in is Buttigieg and Warren.
Right.
I think those are the two that if anybody is going to catch a little breeze in their sails and maybe outperform what I thought they could do, it's those two candidates.
Both are policy wonks. Both are have a capable grasp of policy. Buttigieg can debate and speak very well, as he's shown kind of in one-on-one format. And so this will be a opportunity for them to shine, among fellow candidates on the stage with them. So it'll be interesting to see the tack they take, whether or not either of them go on the attack or they just try to rise above the fray and differentiate themselves.
So I would say they have the most to gain.
Yeah.
I think your most desperate candidate right now is Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Because he, I think, expected the coalition that he built in 2016 to hold.
And it hasn't.
And Warren is taking it to him in a lot of ways. He will be the one who I would look for if somebody's going to pull something desperate, if someone's going to really try to lob something at Biden or at another candidate or really kind of distinguish themselves from the field. I think Bernie is almost into a spot, or he's in the spot where he has to do that at this point. He's got to stop the bleeding somehow.
Yeah, he can afford to take a risk. I mean, he's down.
Yeah.
I mean, he will try to set himself apart so he can, it reminds me of his comments a couple of weeks ago about socialism and, bringing that again back into the forefront when Democrats do not want that word out there by any means. So you may see him do something with that or, definitely, I think, accuse all of his fellow Democrats of being insufficient and not being able to, focus on the issues that his coalition cares about.
And Liz is trying to refocus socialism and trying to rebrand this more under that American economic fairness and populist.
Right.
So she is trying to develop that next generation socialist message that appeals to the millennials and the folks, the 40% of millennials that are open to investigating socialism, to the folks that are in that same age group that don't see it as an imperative to continue under capitalism, and to kind of play to that, hey, I get it, the economy is good right now, the unemployment rate is low, the stock market's great, but how really good are you doing, and how much better can you do? She's trying to repackage that in a way that steals a lot of Bernie's basic, I want you to give everything free kind of thunder from it.
She's going to address the fact that, while the economy is strong, there are fundamentals that are still...
Who's it strong for?
Right. And the fact that, income hasn't kept pace with cost of living.
Yep.
And that, salary adjustments are down. Income levels, when adjusted for inflation, is down. And the fact that healthcare costs are taking a big chunk of Americans' income as well. Cost of education. And so I think she's going to draw attention to all of that. The question is how many times she says the phrase working class Americans. That you could play a drinking game to that, I would think.
And how likable does she come across?
Yeah, that's been her challenge all along is, she has a firm grasp of policy, but she doesn't have the charisma
100%
that, is needed, I think, if you're going to be a presidential candidate. You need some level of charisma to grow your base and to keep them energized and excited.
Elizabeth Warren would be a great kind of chief of staff.
Yeah.
Who keeps everybody coordinated, keeps everybody moving together, defines and coordinates your legislative agenda, and knows how to get legislation passed. But like you just said, there's a lot of people, and I'm definitely one of them. Do I see a president when I look at her? Maybe, but for right now, she's going to have to do something to kind of close that gap.
Yeah, she has some work to do. So work is definitely cut out for her. On the other hand, I think, Biden has been so casual and just so, kind of, playing it by ear, this campaign. So it'll be interesting to see how casual he is on the stage, whether or not he just kind of, is like, I'm here, this is what I think, and just kind of leaves it at that.
Biden falls into the most to lose category.
Yeah.
By far, it's Biden. Because number one, he is the front runner. The front runner always has the most to lose, I think, in any debate like this. And two, he really hasn't defined anything about his candidacy other than I'm normal, I feel good, you know me, I'm not Donald Trump. When does he reach a point, and is it after this first debate where maybe Warren and Buttigieg really hit on policy and start generating some buzz and excitement from a policy perspective? When is Joe Biden forced to come out and actually explain why it's important from a policy perspective for him to be president?
Yeah.
And I think he's trying to avoid that.
He has to make the substance
cost.
argument. I agree. I think he's been coasting this whole time. I mean, he's coasted. He's relied on the strength of his name and his prior service in government, and hasn't done much. I mean, he really hasn't. I mean, he's missed a lot of, big campaign opportunities that the others have gone to.
Yeah.
And he could afford to, but he's not going to be able to continue coasting like that. He'll have to get more serious now.
Yeah. And everybody else, really, they'll get a question or two. They'll get a few minutes.
Yeah.
Other than the top six. I think I'm counting this right. Biden, Bernie, Buttigieg, Warren, Kamala Harris. That's five. I don't know if anybody else take the field by storm. It certainly doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, there isn't anybody that's shown the capability to do that so far. So it would have to be somebody that kind of breaks out of the normal mold that we've seen them in. And there really isn't anybody else that strikes me as that can do that.
And with this many people participating and in this format, it's going to be really, really hard.
It is. I was going to say it would have to be something like launching a new policy idea or taking a position that's just completely against the grain or unexpected. But at the same time, you're not going to have that much time to explain that because you're going to be so limited in terms of time per candidate because of so many candidates on the stage.
So let's think back to debates that actually changed something. And one that was brought up that I thought was fascinating, and I didn't remember this one. In 2008, Barack Obama is trailing Clinton by a mile. Clinton gets a question at a presidential candidate debate about New York City passing a law or considering a law to give driver's license to illegal aliens. And the question was, do you agree with that, yes or no? And
I remember that.
Remember when she gives this long kind of rambling political answer, and the moderator is, Senator Obama, you're shaking your head. And he says, well, I'm shaking my head because she never answered the question. I don't know where she stands on this. She just gave you a political answer. She didn't give you an honest answer. And that was a turning point for him. That's where people kind of said, you know what, she really maybe doesn't answer anything. I like the way that guy answered it. Could something like that happen for one of those five or one of the second-tier candidates in something like this?
Yes, and I don't have any, kind of primary examples to, all of the examples I keep thinking of are general election. But you're right, it's a candidate being able to kind of exploit a vulnerability of their opponent who fails to answer directly or seems to be caught flat-footed.
Yeah.
And so it's right timing, that other candidate being able to strike and to be able to exploit that and then say what they would do differently and come across as resolute, resolved, and have a firm answer. So
it's got to be
possible. Yeah,
it's got to be on the right topic too.
It does,
Immigration is one of those topics.
It has to be on a topic that resonates with the Democratic base. That,
immigration,
gets them excited.
Abortion, race. Maybe something culturally way more than a policy. And I think that's where Obama took advantage of that moment. There are some topics that could cause something like that. There's going to be a ton of immigration questions. Yeah. And again, if I'm prepping my candidate, if I'm the campaign manager, we are going over time and time and time again. What are your talking points and what are your talk track on immigration? If you get flustered, if you get knocked off track, what is your pivot back? What's safe to say? Because that's an area that, as Trump has shown, you can get yourself into some deep water on that fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's a critical area because it's been the focal point of the Trump administration, and it's an area where Democrats can draw a black and white contrast on where they stand. So that's going to be critical. Healthcare will be another one.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, so to discuss. It'll be interesting to see if abortion comes up with rulings across the country.
I think it has to at this point.
That's a hot button issue. There are a handful of topics, I think, where candidates can differentiate themselves and kind of go for the jugular if they notice an opponent that's kind of, waffling or, out there kind of blowing in the wind.
What's really going to be interesting on the healthcare one, now that you mentioned it, is I'm pretty sure Biden is going to be the only one who is not going to be promoting some sort of Medicare for all.
Right.
Everybody is going to jump on that.
Biden's talk track is about improving the existing healthcare law, Affordable Care Act, and making tweaks and changes to it when everybody else is going to be like, we're beyond that. We need wholesale healthcare reform, whether that, they're going to be talking about public option, Medicare for all, all of these different alternatives.
And I think as a Republican, I know your stance, so I'll answer it, and you tell me if this is how you would look at it, or you think moderate Republicans would look at it. To me, that makes Biden look like the adult on on the stage.
It does. I think a good example of where Democrats have failed on that was early on in the campaign. Kamala Harris came out,
Yes.
and that basically wasn't that for Medicare for All that she came out for?
She came out and said, "Oh, we'll just abolish all private insurance."
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
it just flippantly we'll just get rid
very
of that.
flippant. And then she got pushback on that.
Yeah,
and
do you
she,
know what that means?
She retreated.
Yeah.
But it was a major mistake. And so Republicans look at that and, as scary, like that's not where we're going to go. That's an example of a bridge too far.
Yeah.
So, moderate Republicans that are watching the debates closely will hone in on that. And again, it makes Biden not only the adult, but more appealing. And again, he's in a primary, so that's not his audience. But, the general, Biden is the one that a lot of Republicans find appealing.
It'll be interesting to see. Does the stage and the participants pull Biden to the left in real time during this debate, or do they see Biden kind of standing his ground in the middle and the reaction that he's getting, and it pulls some of them back to the center? I can't see any of those candidates centering themselves other than Biden, Buttigieg.
They're trying to get
running out of
whatever
edge
they can. And I think, Biden, I think, can make an argument saying, me, you know where I stand. I've been in government this many of years. You comb through my record. I think that any parallels that he can make with the Obama administration and service there is helpful with Obama's popularity. And then, make the electability argument that this is an election that we cannot afford to take a risk.
This is a zero-sum game. We got to win this. So let's pivot to Biden's kind of gaffe here yesterday or earlier in the week, where he tried to tell a story about how he can work with opposition by basically saying, for his long history in the Senate, he worked with several senators who were segregationist, but he still was able to work with them to advance legislation, find common ground, and work together to get things done.
Right.
With that high level, Brandon, is that a positive story or is that a negative story he told?
Well, I thought it was positive. It turned to be a big blow up, though. And his opponents apparently saw a weakness that they could take advantage of. Yeah. So you had Cory Booker firing off press releases.
Of course. Spartacus got fired up.
Right. Saying that, he, supported, these segregationists and he was praising them when I didn't detect any praise.
I didn't see praise.
He in fact referred to one of the senators as the meanest guy around.
Yeah.
And he was clearly put off by them, but he was trying to give examples of having worked with all these different types of people. And the fact of the matter is, if you have been around as long as Biden has in his time in the Senate, you could not afford to not work with some of these people. If you just said you were going to throw your hands up and not work with them, you weren't going to get anything done. Yeah. And so it's about being pragmatic and working with somebody to move other legislation forward that's positive doesn't mean that you agree with them or support their views on everything else. It's a non sequitur. But again, it's something his opponents are looking for anything that they can use against him because he's flying high, and so they took advantage of this. He hasn't backed down, though. He's stood his ground over this,
as I don't think he should,
and he shouldn't. Yeah, because he was giving examples, and in no way could you construe that anything he said was in praise of those segregationists or their views. He was giving relatable examples of having worked with people whom he disagreed.
And if you're going to give an example of working with somebody that you adamantly disagreed with, wouldn't you pick maybe the couple of the worst people you've ever worked with and say, hey, these people were segregationists. I totally didn't believe their ideology or what they were after, but we were able, in the Senate, you got to get to 60. That's by design. I was able to get that done and get this because I could reach across the aisle. Didn't say I agreed with what they did or their approach to race relations, but this is how you get things done.
Exactly. And I think it's a positive attribute, and it's what you want in a president. But at the same time, the Democrats are not looking for somebody who can work across the aisle. They're looking for somebody who is mad, who's going to stand up very boldly and make a statement. But the problem is, in terms of being effective, you want somebody who is president who's going to be able to negotiate and be able to partner and collaborate with the other side. And if Democrats win the White House, they may not necessarily win the Senate. So they could be in a scenario where they control the presidency and the House, but not the Senate, which would require skills like Joe Biden has to be able to get some of these reforms across the finish line. So Democrats should be cognizant of that, but again, they're looking for somebody to kind of just stand up and speak out and be loud. Yeah. And so Biden isn't that person.
So I guess what I'm struggling with is I certainly understand the concept of, hey, you're involved in something that I don't believe in, therefore I don't want to work with you. I guess where is that list? Who made that list? Obviously, that list has changed in the last 2 years, even, I would say. Who's the keeper of that list, and who gets to maintain that?
And who decides? Yeah, that's a good question, because it's not. I mean, if you take the current Congress now, we talked last week about AOC and Ted Cruz coming together to work on lobbying reform.
Found something they could talk about.
And technically they could not be further apart. I mean, should that be an example then of maybe they shouldn't be able to come together? I mean, if you're going to throw that argument and use that, broadly, where do you, again, draw the line? And again, we're talking about, decades ago. I mean, you really wouldn't, with the dynamics in the Senate at that time, and especially the Southern senators, you would not have been able to get legislation passed if you did not work with those people.
If you wanted Jim Crow to be codified forever, you could have just screamed, "You are all a bunch of hillbilly racists at the South," and never worked to try to resolve it. But because Joe Biden said he was here to get something done, and he chose to talk and work with somebody that he disagreed with adamantly, is that now something that disqualifies him for the presidency?
Yeah, it just seems counterintuitive. I mean, that it seems to be you should want those qualities in your president rather than, we've seen what dysfunction looks like in an intransigent president who's unwilling to work with the other side. Why would you want that just with a D behind their name? That doesn't do the country any good.
I wish somehow we could just advertise this list on the web somewhere. Yeah. Maybe, some hip government
so we're all
site,
on the same page
so
and we all know.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, if you show up to Pod one night and you're wearing a Nazi uniform, it's over. I think we can all agree with that. It's just, again, but where is this ever shifting, ever growing, what is now... I was going to use the word acceptable, but that's not it. It's now, if I see this, I have to completely cut this out of my life and my experience altogether. And I can't question, I can't ask, I can't try to work with. These items mean total separation.
Right. That's kind of where we're at. And that seems to be, we see this come up on the campaign trail when it comes to politicians that have connections to people that are considered unsavory. It's just, they're expected to immediately disavow them, completely, act like that person didn't exist and move on. But again, there doesn't seem to be any standard. It's just whatever seems to be
and I hate
the
to do
flavor of the day.
But I have to give my standard PSA, and this is back to you, AOC. As a PSA, simply don't make references about Nazis, Jews, and the Holocaust. Just in general. Just if you're going to give an example, just don't use that one, because it never comes out the way you intended it. And hey, the United States government is not like the Nazi government. No. There is absolutely never been a comparison. No comparison.
We don't have
is
gas
adequate.
Chambers, mass exterminations happening.
And don't use the word concentration camp and then say, I wasn't talking about the Holocaust. Yes, you were.
Yes,
you were.
I mean, that is, firmly associated with the Holocaust. It's the other thing is that this whole argument now with what her statement, I mean, it's shifted the focus and attention away from, the detention centers and the plight of, these undocumented immigrants to her statement and the outrage over it. So it doesn't do anybody good, because now the focus is off where it should be.
So here's what I don't understand. So you've got the Biden thing that he did, and I think we can both agree probably should have sharpened his language up.
Yeah.
I mean, we get where he's coming from, but we're also taking the time to analyze this. And we're also giving Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt of his 40 years of service in the Senate, the vice presidency. And if he were a racist and a segregationist, we probably would know that.
Yeah.
But he's getting pounded by Democrats, some in the media. He's taking some real heat over this. AOC, while it's not the same thing, she makes this concentration camp. Again, just something she shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
Just an analogy she shouldn't have made and language she shouldn't use. If you follow any liberals or even any mainstream media outlets on Twitter, everybody is coming to her defense. I mean, she has a whole laundry list of people trying to explain that concentration camp goes beyond being used in a World War II Holocaust context, and that was totally acceptable. And no, you're just ignorant of history if you think concentration camp means Holocaust, which is just stupid.
It is. The only recent context that I've seen concentration camp used is in North Korea for the camps that they put people in.
That'd be another one.
But those are camps where those people never see the light of day. They never get out of those camps, and most of the time they are exterminated in those camps. So that fits that definition, with what we associate with the Nazis. And so again, outside of those two uses, I mean, if you're going to throw out that word, I mean, you better be prepared for the backlash you get.
And I'm going to get ridden here by the dibs that listen, but hey, AOC, quick tweet. Hey, sorry for using the term concentration camp to describe the detention centers. Yeah. It was more, I should have used internment camp, which described maybe our treatment of Japanese U.S. citizens in World War II. But concentration camp isn't correct.
No.
And I apologize for that, and I'll clean my language up and be more succinct next time.
Oh, perfect.
Why
but nobody apologizes anymore
answer?
Because everybody just, doubles down. We don't have anybody in elected office that will apologize. And I don't even remember the last time somebody did apologize. It's just people refuse to now.
And even Biden, hey, I got nothing to apologize for, but I understand what you guys are saying. Next time I give an example from my past, I'll try to use some better references. Next question. Why can't we?
I think that is something. I think Trump's behavior in that regard has unintentionally had an impact on down. Yeah. And I don't think anybody on the Democratic side would admit it, but I think we have a culture now where that has become the norm, and it's just don't apologize, don't surrender, just, hold your ground, and, eventually the controversy will die down, because if you do apologize, it's seen as weak. You can't do that.
See Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, who's a good Dem.
Good example of somebody who did it back down and apologize.
Hey, sorry. Yeah. Oh, that wasn't me in the picture. And suddenly, and he survived. As outrageous as some of Trump's behavior has been in this area, we've as dibs have kind of got to look at ourselves in the face over our lack of action, let's say, or demanding the step down of Ralph Northam.
It's a good example. Exactly.
I heard somebody say today that I have no sympathy for Joe Biden. This was a Republican, because remember in 2012 when Joe Biden told a group of African Americans that Mitt Romney wanted to put them back in chains?
I do remember that. Yeah, he put that statement, which was very incendiary.
Absolutely.
That was one of a couple, but that was probably the worst, I think, at the time.
That was probably the worst thing I've heard Biden say in the last 12 to 15 years. In some ways, this is what goes around comes around. So again, if you're going to use that type of language when you feel it suits you, and this is Mitt Romney.
Of all people. This isn't Donald Trump.
Romney.
Which you still would want to say that statement, but again,
absolutely.
Mitt Romney of all people. Who doesn't?
When you use race in your politics and in your language, and then you get bit in the ass by it when you didn't mean to, hey, you just got to take that in stride and move on.
Exactly. Got to take responsibility for it.
You think anybody calls him out on this on the stage on next week?
I mean, it's so recent. I think so. I don't see how it doesn't come out because, again, it's one of the few things that his opponents think they can exploit, and so I think they're going to seize at it. And I would see one of them or more of them making the argument that this is why we need new blood. He's old. He's out of touch. That's the argument they're going to try to make. I don't know if it'll be successful, but and then of course his counter to that is I have the experience. I can win. Electability. This is being twisted. We need somebody who can go there, be able to get the job done and work with all kinds of people. It's one thing, to be a candidate. It's another thing to govern. And all of these people on the stage with me, they don't have the governing experience, and that's where they lack.
I think Pete Buttigieg is on the same stage as Biden.
I think so too.
I could see him saying, this is an example of this look forward approach I've been preaching. When every time Biden talks about himself, he talks about himself in terms of the past, even things that weren't so positive in the past. Is this really what you want?
And Buttigieg, in many ways, comes across similar to Biden, that he is relatable. He has, the experience of wanting to work together. He's not as inflammatory as some of the other Dems and doesn't seize upon every latest, kind of left-wing attack or left-wing pet issue. And so he can go at the heart of that, while still being able to say, I'm younger, I'm more in touch, my background and experience, military, everything gives me, a view and perspective that he doesn't have. And he can go after some of those same voters hailing from the Midwest.
And if I'm Buttigieg, I'm like, hey, Democrats, when we win the presidency, when we have a young, energetic, forward-thinking candidate, all the way back to Kennedy, Clinton, Obama.
Right.
These are people who were talking change. When we don't do well, when we have an older establishment candidate.
Yeah.
That we win when we capture the vision of what we want America to be. And if you look right down the stage and look at Biden, in the way he presents, in the way he talks, in the policies that he puts out, this fantasy he has that if he gets elected, that bipartisanship is going to end and our partisanship's going to end, and we're going right back to where he's going to get down on the Senate floor and make things happen. You're kidding yourself. And
right.
I think he's got a real argument to make there.
And he can. I think he can cloak that argument in generational change and what that means for being able to bring change to the country, different direction, and doing things differently and not always just doing them the way we've done in the past. And that the problems, the challenges that we face today are very different than what we faced 30, 40, 50 years ago, and that's what sets him apart from Biden.
So there was the famous Kennedy-Nixon debate, I believe, where if you listen to it on the radio,
because that was the first one that was televised.
You're like, oh my God, Nixon won. This Kennedy guy is just some young buffoon. This is ridiculous. They're not even in the same class on the same stage. If you watched it, it was Kennedy is our next president, hands down. I don't know who this old grumpy mean dude is, but we want to go in this direction.
Well, and the thing, I think Nixon was like wearing makeup too, which he wasn't accustomed to, and then his makeup started running. Did you hear about this? Yeah, and so he also had that look with the scowl, and he came across looking like a villain out of
Nixon
like a
was not
horror
an
movie.
attractive man.
No,
there's
he was not.
And he was paired, the visual pairing next against a young John Kennedy.
Quite a contrast.
Does Biden have any visual problems with these debates?
He'll have some just because of his age. I mean, that's going to be an obvious one compared to the vast majority of the rest of the candidates on stage, except for perhaps Bernie Sanders. So he does have that.
They can't stand those two by each other.
Oh, they can't. That would be.
You got to separate them
What if they have them ordered by like age? So they have the oldest.
That would be so funny.
That would be hilarious.
I would put Biden and Buttigieg right by each other.
That would be funny. Hey, if SNL needs a skit idea,
oh my God.
Do that. You can.
I don't know if SNL knows enough comedians to bring in to play all 20.
Oh, probably not. That's
a pretty huge ask to get 20 comedians to impersonate that field.
But wouldn't that be incredible? Oh my gosh, that'd be so funny.
God. These are going to be interesting.
They will.
Always interesting.
Biden does smile a lot more though, so he doesn't scowl like Nixon does. So I don't think he'll have the facial issues. But yeah, he's old. That's the problem. There's
no way to cover it up.
Yeah, you can't.
He is
bypass
old. these are interesting. These are always interesting. There's always somebody who kind of ends their candidacy. And it's always a possibility that somebody ignites theirs, but that's getting rarer and rarer with social media and the
because the
24-hour
campaign
coverage.
just starts so much earlier too, so there isn't as much opportunity for that. Yeah.
And what about any of these people do we not know?
At this point,
I can't.
It's all out there, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. For the next year and a half, they're just going to rinse, wash, repeat the same stuff, waiting for people to make errors that they can pounce on. I don't know what more we can learn about the 5 or 6 serious Democratic candidates for president.
And that's typically where the only time we're going to see any type of change in polling is when there's an unforced error made, a gaffe, that's another candidate can exploit and then kind of rise to the top. Because otherwise, everything being equal, if that doesn't happen, numbers typically don't move.
We talked about the percentage chance Biden was the nominee. And I think last time we did this, we said like 66% or something. You still feel solid about that number?
I would probably bump that down to 60 now.
I would too.
So, but he still has the edge, but he is losing a couple points. They keep getting chopped away with some of these controversies, and then his just kind of mediocre responses to him. Milquetoast responses.
I think that's the best way to describe his candidacy for so far. Let's put it this way. You and I could be running the Biden candidacy right now.
Oh, he's been like super casual, like calling it in.
There's just nothing about it.
I almost wonder if he's like, how he's going to come across is just going to be like, hey, I'm here, just be, just because it just comes across as very light, very, I don't want to use the word not serious, but it seems like they just have it ramped up to a level you would expect, and that's going to happen sometime soon, I would hope.
I hate to say this, and I know how horrible this sounds coming out of my mouth. Is Joe Biden just a low energy Donald Trump in some ways? Babbling, talking. Have you heard the times I've heard Biden talk? It's just this stream of consciousness.
It's not as bad as Trump, though. I mean, he can form sentences and
very true
and be understandable, but he does seem to be just more kind of off the cuff. And he does tend to kind of ramble a little bit. I mean, it's less rehearsed. It's less, intentional in terms of how he speaks.
He's more refined, experienced version in at least his candidacy up to this point. And now he's running his candidacy. Seems to mirror
how I think of his candidacy?
lot.
I think back of the photo, I think from 2012 when he was sitting on that biker woman's lap. Do you remember that photo?
God, yes.
that's what comes
like a diner in Iowa, and there's this biker gal with like a leather halter top.
Yes, and do you see the guy like to the left, like who's giving like the weird look, like what's going on?
And he's got a hand around her, just a smile on his face.
Yes.
And it looks like your creepy uncle with a biker chick sitting on his lap.
And I think he's like leaning in, like her face, smiling.
Smiles. Remember the fake Onion story of like Joe Biden washes his Trans Am on the White House lawn. And he's got like one of those white old Trans Ams with a big eagle on it.
Right.
And it shows like this old dude with Biden's head on. He's got his shirt off and a pair of jorts. I don't.
See, that's kind of the impression you get of Biden. It just kind of epitomizes how he runs a campaign.
I hear a lot of people criticize Biden as he's not a very good politician. And the reason why he's failed miserably in his last 2 presidential bids is he's not very good at this. I did not want to believe that just because I believe Joe Biden can take Donald Trump and win back the presidency.
Yeah.
This may be the start of the beginning of us all remembering, wow, Joe Biden really isn't that good.
Well, and the difference is with the last, because he's run for president several times. I don't even remember how many now, starting back like 1988. But the difference this time is that he has a lead, and a substantial lead he started with. Yeah. All the times before, I don't know if he even made it over the single digits. He was always near the bottom.
In Iowa, he got less than 1% in the caucus. He got hammered.
And so he ran poor campaigns before, and then I'm looking now and saying, okay, now you're leading, and you don't seem to be running the campaign of someone who's in the lead.
Yeah.
Like, again, you need to ramp things up and really kind of shift into gear, and he has not done that yet. So
will you watch Trump live tweet this? Because he's already said.
I heard that, yeah.
You can expect his comments in real time on Twitter.
I guess, yeah. How much of that I can take. Did you watch the rally the other day?
I tried. I tried.
I couldn't. I could not.
I bailed off those about 6 or 8 months ago. I just couldn't. I just can't.
But this is the re-elect rally, Greg. Come on,
It's the same material.
There's nothing different. It's recycled.
Stuff. He spent 20 minutes on Hillary Clinton. It's the same attacks. Here's where it's going to be really interesting. Trump as a candidate claiming victimhood, he had some run. People don't like when the president of the United States claims victimhood.
No, and he's continued to do that. They're all out to get me, the deep state, blah, 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 blah.
He has not backed off of that one bit. This is rigged. They're out to get me. This is a witch hunt.
The other thing, again, I think that stands out, and again, we're talking about outside of democratic norms, you have candidates that go after their opponents sometimes aggressively and say they would be wrong for the country because A, B, and C.
That's standard stuff.
Yeah, or we can't afford 4 more years of this candidate. Trump said that the Democrats are out to destroy the country and destroy Americans. Yeah. I mean, he used that language, and that is something we're not accustomed to hearing from any presidential candidate on the campaign trail. The other side wants to destroy you.
If you and I were suddenly the Republican Democratic nominee for the presidency, there'd be a steady stream of, let me tell you why Brandon's wrong.
Yeah.
That is to be expected.
Right. That's a policy argument.
Correct. And I watch those rallies now in highlights because I made it through like 3 of them until I'm like, I don't even know.
You made it. Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
I didn't watch it all. I couldn't. I'm like,
and again, this was 78 minutes of mostly incoherent babble, and he's on script. He's off script. He's using voices to impersonate people and making fun of people. That's standard. But let's not also lose fact that there were 20 some odd thousand people there.
Yes.
And there was another probably equal amount of that who would have gotten in if seating weren't available.
Right.
That's not polling. It's anecdotal. But Trump still has this ability to tap into this excitement in this base. For all you dibs out there, hey, the Trumpers are going to be right back at it in 2020.
Yeah, they're not going to stay home.
You think we're going to suppress their vote?
No.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You have to match and exceed their enthusiasm with the voters who get to the polls. That's what you have to do. That's the task at hand. And it's no coincidence he held this in Florida, which is a must-win state, his second home.
Yep.
And he held it in Orlando, in Orange County. So for those that don't know Florida politics, Florida is a very divided state. You have the Panhandle that's uber conservative.
Yep.
You have southern Florida, particularly southeastern Florida, that's very liberal when you talk about like Miami-Dade County and Broward County and Palm Beach. And then you have central Florida, which is really up for grabs. And so that what they call the I-4 corridor, which goes through Orlando and then veers west into like Tampa. That area is the swing part of the state of Florida. So goes that area, so goes the state. Trump managed to win it last time. Barack Obama was able to win it both times that he ran. So, Trump had his rally there for a specific reason because he cannot win re-election without winning Florida. And if you look at some of the recent polls, he's in trouble in Florida.
And I think too, let's not forget, we lost the election on 440 counties through the Midwest and Upper Midwest that flipped from Obama to Trump.
Right.
So I don't want to hear a single word about Texas, Georgia, Arizona. That is all gravy if we get there.
Yeah, that'll be icing on the cake if that happens.
It's those 440 counties that whomever wins this really needs to set up shop there. That's where we need to focus on.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Iowa,
Indiana. Yeah. I mean, up through there. It's a really interesting map to see. And George Will was talking about it on Bill Maher a couple weeks ago, and I went back and watched a video where he's like, again, that these counties lay out. This was your blue wall. There was a 40-point swing from Obama to Trump through some of these counties. Obama won most of these by 15 to 20 points. Trump won most of these by 15 or 20 points. So it's tapping into why that change happened. How much of that was directly attributed to Hillary? How much messaging are you on point? And how do you win those counties back?
So targeting those voters, those blue-collar swing state voters has to be the centerpiece of the Democratic strategy.
If it's
Hillary did not send in
lose.
reinforcements. She did not, go into Michigan and Wisconsin. She took those areas for granted, and she lost. So they have to send canvassers, volunteers, have field organizations within those precincts to win. And again, if the Dems win Michigan, Wisconsin, they win Iowa, Pennsylvania, the election's over. That you guys got it.
The Democratic election strategy for electing the president flows from those 440 counties out.
Yeah.
And every messaging starts with them and let it resonate to other parts of the country where we're strong.
Exactly.
God. So speaking of right over here, I saw the Huffington News pop up, and a listener of the pod texted me. It's like, if you're going to record your podcast, you got to talk about that Roy Moore is back and running for Senate election in Alabama.
Apparently made the big announcement.
The pride of Alabama, Mr. Roy Moore.
Oh, yeah, as if I
want to do is make fun of you right now for being a Republican. I know Roy Moore is not your fault, but can't you guys do something about this? Come on.
I know. Apparently, I mean, Republicans in Alabama want to give Doug Jones, his re-election victory, because that's what's going to happen.
We will give Roy Moore the 2 minutes he's worthy of getting. One question: is there any way he pulls out a primary victory and gets himself back on the ballot?
I want to say no, but I don't think it's impossible.
I can't.
This is Alabama, and you're talking about a Republican primary, deep red state. I think it's unlikely, but I mean, he could pull it out. And I think part of the challenge is I think there's multiple candidates in the race. If it was a one-on-one, he would have won the primary.
Yeah.
But I think if you have 3, 4, or 5 candidates in the primary, he could end up winning just by keeping his hardcore supporters together and win with like 30 to 40%, and then
the thing
nominee.
Is, Roy Moore's not just local to Alabama. He's a national story.
He is.
If I'm the DNC, I'm like, really? You want to talk how much the Republicans have changed and what
you have to be
for?
The DNC to be gleeful. Again. They get to tie Republicans to this nominee.
Absolutely.
The other story that's not quite on the same level, but Chris Kobach has announced that he's going to run for Senate in Kansas for Pat Roberts' Senate seat.
I thought he was running for the biggest a-hole in the Midwest, which I thought pretty much everybody knew he was.
No, okay. I don't know if we talked about, but and this is just a tangent, but several weeks ago the story came out that he was gunning for
you read
Homeland Security
list of demands.
He had this whole list of demands, and the Trump administration balked, and they released that to the news media.
And they were access to a private jet. It was unbelievable.
Being able to fly home whenever he wants. I mean, he had all these preconditions. I mean, it was kind of like, political
it's
diva.
Like you're Chris Kobach, right? You understand that. You're kind of a mid-tier. In no way does your skill set warrant any of this stuff you've asked for.
No. Clearly not, but he's running for Senate. It's an open Senate seat. Democrats have not won a Senate seat in Kansas since 1932, and they're very excited because if Kobach makes it out of a Republican primary, they feel this is the best opportunity for Democrats to pick up a Senate seat in Kansas. There's been some names talked about. One of them is Barry Grissom, who's the U.S. attorney for the, I think, Eastern District of Kansas. So that's going to be a race to watch. Not on the same levels of Roy Moore, but similar in that a very polarizing candidate who, basically is why the Republicans weren't able to win the governorship, and that went Democratic.
Yeah.
And here he is running again. And a similar story with Roy Moore. Ego, Chris Kobach just can't say no and is refusing to go away.
Let's pivot to last week, the Iranian Navy being what it is, a bunch of aluminum fishing boats basically in the Midwest. They attached some mines to some oil tankers, disrupted the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, and just as a general way to act up and show their displeasure with the economic sanctions.
Right.
And then yesterday, they shot down an American drone. When I think of drones again, I think of the ones you buy at, Best Buy or Target. This
the cameras attached to them. This was not the case.
This drone was the size of a 737.
Right.
And this drone was in international airspace. It was not a stealth drone, so it wasn't someplace maybe that we didn't want anybody to know where it was. It was right out in the open, and the Iranians deliberately shot this down.
Yeah.
Where's this going? Where does this end? What's the next step in this escalation?
Yeah, it's an obvious act of provocation coming on the heels of what happened last week. And, part of this is that this has been ramping up since the Trump administration decided to bow out of the Iran nuclear agreement. And there's been a war of words with a lot of heated rhetoric towards Iran, and that has continued unabated. A effort to get European partners and other countries to, forego and stop any type of business dealings with Iran. And so Iran is responding now and acting back and responding pretty aggressively. And so the question is, where does this take us? Another story that was kind of understated was that we're expanding our troop presence in the Middle East.
Another 1,000
Another
troops
1,000 sent over.
sent.
So, we've talked about there is no appetite for any boots on the ground effort in the Middle East after Iraq. It's just not going to happen. So if we do show force, or do we carry out airstrikes? How far do we go? I think that too, the last thing Trump wants is, especially the year that he's up for re-election, is to get involved in a war that could be seen as unpopular. Because again, this isn't like after 9/11. We're in a whole different ball game when it comes to Iran.
So what part does the Trump pulling out of the Iran deal play in this current scenario? Because some people say, well, we should have pulled out. We never should have made the deal in the first place. You're just blaming the United States. Hey, we're not the ones shooting drones down and attacking ships. And I think there's legitimate points to all of that. But doesn't that have to enter somewhere into this conversation?
It doesn't justify what Iran is doing, but it precipitated it. I mean, you can say that, this action directly correlates to why Iran is acting out. And, the fact of the matter is that, the deal may not have been the best deal, but after it was passed and implemented, it becomes even more imperative that you don't, withdraw from it, because that, I think, creates more instability. We have this deal. There was a lot of disagreement on it, but I think the key is to stick to it, because there aren't that many other options when it comes to Iran. What are you going to do if you don't make a deal with them? I mean, are we willing again to attack, to go to war? What does that look like? We're talking about a lot of life lost. We're talking about upsetting the balance of power in the Middle East. We're talking about the conflict that could spill over the borders into other neighboring countries as well. If you look at Iraq, and you have Saudi Arabia, which would have a lot to gain from, because they're a foe to Iran. So there's all these moving pieces geopolitically. And so, that's the whole reason the agreement came into place. It was far from perfect, but it was seen as like the only, without using force, the only option that was available.
And again, I think you're right. We can blow up their entire Navy, which basically we did in the 80s. And that's not that hard, because it's not a very sophisticated Navy. So we can clear the seas of any naval presence from Iran. We could drop bombs on Tehran or in their oil refineries. To what end is that going to do? But we're not going to put boots on the ground. We're not going to invade. And there's really no way to affect a regime change.
And that's the thing. If you disrupt to a degree that you have a regime change or the regime falls, and it happens in this vacuum of power, who seizes power?
Absolutely.
Do you have ISIS? Do you have, you could have basically people usurp power that could be worse, and that we do not want, in that position.
We have seen this before.
We don't get to pick who seizes power.
And I think people that are preaching this Trump is on a path to war with Iran, I think that's misguided.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump wants to go to war with Iran.
I don't think
he
so
knows
either.
that will kill or greatly lessen his chances at re-election. Now, Pompeo and Bolton, I think we all know where they stand. I think this will be, can Trump's need and desire to build his American first brand and to have that as part of his reelection campaign, and have that in the toolbox that, hey, I'm keeping us out of foreign wars that don't really serve America's purpose. Can he hold off Bolton and Pompeo, who probably are going to lobby for something much more aggressive?
Yeah, I think that's key. And so we'll have to see how this plays out. And there's a battle going on in the administration right now between those hardliners and those that don't want to go to war. And now you don't have somebody like a John Kelly there, or like a Mattis, who can kind of, rein things in. The military leaders, the smart guys, have exited. So you have that. By the way, you have the acting defense secretary who
just got run.
So, and that doesn't even, there's so many other military positions. There's a friend of mine who posted this on Facebook. I reposted it, that are vacant right now. Secretary of the Army. You have all of these that there's no active leaders. And so we're really in a bad spot right now if we were to go to war.
And the Senate just shot down the proposal to sell Saudis more American
Yes.
weaponry.
Right, and that was
again, I don't know if that's a good idea right now either.
no. And again, we're kind of playing fire with fire, and the Middle East is a basket keg right now, and so the Trump has cozied up to Saudi Arabia to such a degree, and there's questions around whether or not that's a bad policy. Saudi Arabia has its own aims and objectives to becoming, the hegemon in the Middle East, and so they don't necessarily line up with us on everything, and so we need to be cautious.
So Putin obviously hated Hillary Clinton for things she had done while she was Secretary of State, and he reveled in the opportunity to sink her presidential bid. I wonder if the Iranians are so aggravated and so mad at Trump for backing out of the Iranian deal, they are going to try to goad him into a military conflict, knowing that it will hurt his chances at getting reelected.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I mean, I think that they are probably looking at the big picture, and they're not, stupid. They know that, there's already been interference, and so it would have surprised me that, they would be entering into the fray.
If we drop bombs on Iranian soil, you got to expect some sort of retaliatory strike on the mainland United States.
And that's what's so scary. And I think that's why everybody's hesitant, except for a few people that are really out there.
Yeah. Let's end with, we talked a little bit about Kyle Khrushchev. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but this was the young man who was a Parkland survivor.
He made a name for himself. Yes. So unlike his classmates who were advocating for stricter gun control, he was very pro-gun and went out there with that message. And so he has, been kind of rided that wave of popularity and fame. And so it comes out this week that, he had applied to Harvard, got accepted. His acceptance was withdrawn due to some statements that he made, some racist statements in a Google Doc.
Like a homework assignment or something. But he wrote the N-word multiple times and used very vulgar racist language.
And his application was rescinded, and he was obviously very disappointed. And he brought up some good points about how everybody makes mistakes. I mean, Harvard's history is littered with examples of, people that, acted without the best motives and intents and who, had racist attitudes and so forth. And so the question was whether or not, these mistakes he made as a kid, immature, high school kid. I think he was either a sophomore or junior.
He was 16.
Yeah. Should be held against him in something like this. And it's again, further proof too in the age that we're in. And it's also evidence that, if he hadn't become known because of this, none of this probably would have come out.
Nobody would have cared.
He wouldn't have, been a student at Harvard next fall.
So I have a 17-year-old son. So I certainly understand the concept of kids that age do a ton of stupid shit.
Yeah.
And some of this you have to put in the box of that was dumb.
Well, a lot of the older generations
this is a learning
just
moment.
say, thank God that, we didn't have the cloud when I was young or social media or all of this, because, I mean, could it be used against you back then?
I don't know what it would have been, because you can't extrapolate what it is now and stick it back 30 years ago. But certainly my generation would have faced the exact same challenges that today's generation face with managing their social media. This is where I struggle. The power of language, the power that language has to perpetuate and keep stereotypes and injustices kind of ingrained in our society.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the outrage to this speech comes from, that it's giving the white kid the pass on these type of things. That's what perpetuates and empowers him to, if he does think this way, or at least thinks it's okay to shock somebody by speaking this way, that he continues that into his adult life. And a lot about the word accountability. Where is that balance between, we're going to try to actively keep you out of Harvard and keep you from this institution that opens up all types of doors, balanced against, hey, you know what? You just could also not have wrote it. And because you did, now there's a penalty to pay.
That's true, and I think there's some argument made that there should be a consequence, but then how long? I mean, what is the statute of limitations when it comes to something like this? Does this follow him the rest of his life? Does it impact, getting into, a top law school down the road? Does it impact his, first place of employment and where he goes to work? I mean, is it going to continually be used? Because if that's the case, then that's unfair, because then you have, one instance that follows you for the rest of your life, and you really don't have the opportunity to make amends and start anew if you're always going to have this cloud hanging over you.
Like we said, where's the list of things that if you do this, we just excise you to
and
the
how or
island?
when do we decide that somebody's forgiven and now they can be redeemed and they can...
Correct.
Because, it seems to be we see that for some and not for others. Again, there's no rhyme or reason logic for when.
As you get older, you realize the power of redemption and that everybody should have access to redeeming themselves for their behavior in some way. I don't know. I don't think this is a fatal blow to this young man. He got offered a full ride to NYU, which again, he's going to get into a great college.
Yeah.
The kid's academic record gets him there. This was the first time life just punched him right in the crotch, which it will do multiple times.
And hopefully it'll be a
during his
learning
life.
lesson to him, and he'll learn
Absolutely.
and he'll move on, and that'll be it.
Learn from this, grow from this, move on. But it's just interesting, again, that whole conversation of... Is there any penalty these days other than completely ostracizing someone or completely destroying someone? Where does forgiveness lie? Does it lie anymore?
Right.
Again, if there's this list of 10 things that what somebody does, nobody can talk to him anymore. Who makes that list? Where is that list? How does that list grow and shrink? These are all things I think that I know I struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
The rules are changing so fast. The punishments are so severe. The penalty for making a mistake. How do you know where that line is and where not that line is? And again, this kid crossed the line. I am not saying that what he said and what he did, that is obviously wrong. My point is the punishment, the immediate punishment and the long-term punishment. Where is that line?
Yeah, and I think it's compounded today because of social media and everything. You have mass outrage, so everybody gets to pile in, which wouldn't have been the case, decades ago, and it becomes, trial by the masses, basically.
Yeah. Should I ask you if you've watched Chernobyl this week, or should I just let it go?
Let's
not
let it go.
asking anymore then.
I will bring it up when I finally am able to get into it. Let's say that.
What are you doing that's keeping you from watching Chernobyl? Because whatever it is, you should stop it
and just
watch this.
Noted. Okay. You've made a powerful argument for it. So.
I've made for a month. I've made the best argument that I can make, and I've not convinced
and
you.
the season's over now, right?
Season's over, so you can watch. It's only like 6 episodes.
Oh, that's
so
easy,
you can
then.
watch
That's
them
doable.
all in one swoop, and you can watch it in a weekend to go from there.
I'll do that next week. I'll make it.
This is where I am. I'm being some sort of ism to you because you're not married, you don't have kids, so I don't understand why you just can't take 6
I should
hours
just be
and
able
watch
to do
this.
it, yes.
I know. So that makes no sense to me because I filter everything through. You're single and you have no kids. You have complete control of your time. Why can't you just watch this?
Right.
I know that's not true, but
not completely true by any means, but yes, I will make it a priority to watch that.
And you face this as multiple times from multiple people who are married.
I
and
do.
have kids
I love the.
I don't understand why you can't just do this.
And a
Brandon.
work
You're not married
environment
with
saying,
kids.
"Oh, you can take this on, do this," because you don't have.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't understand why. Yeah, that's something that we.
And it defies logic that eventually I would like to have those things someday, and I can't if I just get thrown everything. Oh, you go ahead and do this. You don't have any
then you'll
life.
immediately flip.
Yes.
I got a kid. I can't do that. What are you talking about? As soon as you get that on this team, you immediately kind of whip the other folks with the exact same thing.
I know. It's
so you
major
got that
frustration.
to look forward to.
Yep.
That's our hour. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Craig.